Imagine turning to your coworker and saying, "Hey, quick favor, can you tell me what I did over the last 48 hours? Organize my emails, refine my meeting notes, and prep for tomorrow's calls? Hey, why don't you even just draft a summary of what I've been doing lately and send it to my manager?" That would be crazy, right? But just because they won't do it doesn't mean it can't be done. That's where Agentic AI comes in. This technology has evolved from asking Siri simple questions to now affecting how workflows are completed at an enterprise level. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Richard Kott, an expert when it comes to development in the agentic space. Richard is a partner development manager at Microsoft. His work with Copilot has made him privy to the latest in agentic AI and how it's impacting industries, enterprises, and the everyday employee. It's time to talk about everyone's new favorite buzzword. It's time to talk about the implications of agentic AI. Richard, it's great to have you on the Edge of IT.
So good to be with you.
Glad we're finally able to make this work.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been looking forward to this. I actually was thinking about how to get ready, and among all of the note-taking and reading and so on, I knew the other thing I had to do was grab my ascot, because if you're showing up with that signature bow tie, I got to bring my best game. So,
well, I appreciate it. Like I said before, I think you're one of the very few people who can pull that off as well as you do.
I try.
Well, it's been great to get to know you over the last several years. I'm glad you're here. I mean, your current work at Microsoft is deeply tied to Copilot and AI advancements. And truly, Microsoft is on the bleeding edge of taking this technology, pushing it out to the users so that they can gain value from it, where they work, how they work, as they work. I'm curious, can you walk us through what a typical day looks like in your role?
Great. I laugh as soon as you say typical day, because no days are typical. But no, good question. I think that this is a good place to kind of talk through how AI has changed the way that I do my work. So definitely diverse, number one, right? There's a couple of different ways that my days will show up, but I think that I could probably split it into mostly kind of being at home or working kind of from the office, or else being on the road. So a typical day, I mean, first things first, especially working in tech, I make sure that I have my own time in the morning where there's no technology. And this isn't so much just to wake up before the kids are up, and I'll do a little stretch, and I'll take some big deep breaths, go outside. I actually take 7 deep breaths facing the sun first thing in the morning. And it's 7 deep breaths, not for any mystical reason, but I just found that when I do that in the middle of the freezing cold Canadian winter, 7 breaths is as much as I can take before my nostrils start to freeze together. So I'll go out, I'll take some deep breaths, I'll do a little bit of stretching, I'll make sure I get my smoothie in, I'll hang out with the kids as I get them out to school, and I just kind of have that non-tech time to slow the brain to get the brain slowly from that kind of sleeping state into my working state. And I think this is really important. Again, it's not about that idyllic family time where we can kick the soccer ball back and forth a little bit in the morning, or sometimes we'll do a little bit of Lego first thing in the morning before they got on the school bus. But it really is just about kind of preparing my mental state, understanding that in all of the ways that AI has allowed us to get more efficient and to do our work better, it's also quite the muscle to work, right? We're all learning new things now. I think that we're in this incredible sea change time. So I think that the number one thing, first off, in my typical day is I start non-tech. I start making sure that I get my deep breaths in, that I move my body a little bit, that I have some personal time with my kids and with my wife, that I get some good nutrition. And then kids are on the bus. I'll have another espresso. I'll get my Wordle. I'll get my connections done. And then I'm ready to roll. And then once I'm ready to roll, Copilot opens up very first thing. And I'm going to ask Copilot for emails, tasks, anything that happened in Teams that came up over the past 24 hours. I ask for 24 hours for a couple of reasons. First off, I want to make sure that I find out what has happened from end of day Eastern time, where I'm at, to end of day Pacific time, where Microsoft headquarters is at. And then for all of the rest of the worldwide time zones, because I do work with a global team. mostly in the Americas, but there's stuff happening around the world that you need to catch up on as well. So I'll do that 24-hour Copilot check where I ask, catch me up on anything that I missed yesterday, anything that happened, again, worldwide. And then I'll usually ask for that in a table with like a kind of to-do list format with what the question was and what I need to do, what the task looks like. So that one's always useful. Just this morning, for example, we had introduced not this morning, in the past, I guess, few months, we'd introduced a new travel tool, and I didn't really pay attention and it kind of slipped past my inbox. So I was actually a couple of emails late to do a new travel verification thing post travel. Just one of these corporate buttons that you need to click to get all of your compliance stuff done and get your expenses in and yada, yada, yada. Another part of that process. So now I was reminded of doing that process, and eventually I will build an agent to do it for me. But for now, that was a great catch that Copilot had for him was, hey, you missed this email, and fortunately nothing missing from my manager or anything else. So it was good to go on that. So that'll be the start of my day. I'll Copilot a little prep. Usually the night before, I will have also asked Copilot for a table with my next day's meetings, and then who's going to be there, the topic of the meeting, any notes from previous meetings in that recurring if it's a recurring meeting, I'll ask for notes from that. And then also links of any documents, which is really useful because then I have that all right there. If there's a PowerPoint that I'm presenting, if there's a PowerPoint that someone else had presented, if there's a pre-read document, if there's emails that are associated with that meeting that have been going back and forth over the past week since, let's say, our last recurrence, then I'm going to have all of that context built into one simple place where I don't need to pop between apps and Windows and OneNote and messages and AI notes and so on. So I'll do that the night before and make sure that I'm ready for stuff like this. And so then once I've done that, I'm going into my day that's usually built around, like so many of us, recurring meetings, and then the ad hoc stuff or the meetings that kind of spin off that become a part of your day. And so in these cases, I'm most often, as long as I remembered, I'm getting much better about remembering. I will remember to hit the record or the transcribe on my Copilot in Teams. And so then while I'm still taking some notes in OneNote for these meetings, most of it is captured in Copilot. So I get action items, I get a summary, I can ask Copilot for further depth on something that someone said, and all of that is generated live while I'm doing it so I can interact with the Copilot in the meeting. I also get the transcript after the fact. So that way, though I do still take notes, often just for the neuroscience of it, if you actually write a note with your hand rather than even typing, but even typing is better than not taking a note at all. This helps you lock information in. So I'm often just for the mental muscle doing a little scribing that we'll often not even look at anymore because I do have the AI notes, but that's just something that kind of I think is good for the brain. So that's kind of the usual flow. And then I'll get the AI notes from the meetings and I'll sort out what needs to be done and so on. And then by the time I get to the end of the day, I have some OneNote pages that pre-Copilot, pre-AI work, those would have been the kind of crux, that would have been the artifact from which I draw my notes, I reflect, make sure I have all my action items in place. Now a lot of that is automated through Copilot. So that's been really nice. The other, let's say, half-ish of the time when I'm not at my home office or at a Microsoft office, I'm taking internal meetings, I might be on the road or visiting you fine folks like I did back in February at your kickoff meeting. I was lucky to be in Barcelona with our telco team for Mobile World Congress. That was a great, great trip. Yeah, a little bit of jet lag, but wonderful trip, beautiful place to visit. And those days actually they're not like wildly dissimilar in terms of workflow from my at-home days. They're just busier. Right? You have a business breakfast and then meetings and then probably a business lunch and some presentations or whatever. And then you might get right into dinners after the fact and then might get to the hotel. You know how it is. You do it.
You're always playing catch up for day after day.
That is exactly it. So that I do my very best, certainly at the end of those days, and definitely on the last day of that week, of a travel week, when it's a busy, for example, a Barcelona week. That last day, that travel day, I'm also using Copilot to catch up in a couple different places. First, the same kind of prompting, just an M365 Copilot that I mentioned. I will also then dive into those AI notes in Teams. So I can go in and I can see all the meetings that I've missed through my intelligent meeting recap. And then in there, I have all of my AI notes. And the thing I love the most that I think that has been the greatest time saver for me in this is that when someone speaks my name in a Teams meeting, I'm mentioned in the AI notes, and then I can hop directly to that part in the meeting. And so then that whole, as you said, always catching up after a meeting, after a week on the road. Yes, absolutely. It doesn't go away, but it has really lessened the catch up load where I could spend honestly like all of a Friday listening to meeting recordings and even on double speed I could. And you know how it is.
Taxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love how you shared the need to get out of the spin of data, right?
Yeah.
Start off your day in the absence of it in quietness. Definitely find that work just pulls you in. I think coming out of the pandemic mindset where home is work and work is home, it's hard to break out of that.
Yeah, it's nice too, but you have to, right? There's benefits to that, but then you also have to balance it. So
yeah. Speaking of exercising your mind in different ways,
I
know that oftentimes you're known to exercise your voice as a singer. You definitely know about harmony. You've done some of that already, but how would you describe the ideal harmony between the enterprise and AI? Is AI going to run everything for us? Or where's that healthy balance?
Well played. I did think you were joking when you were going to call it the old a cappella singing. But yes, I am a musician. You have outed me. I grew up singing in a Catholic boys choir, and the a cappella and harmony singing bug has never left me. I actually just launched our crowdfunding for our latest album that is coming up. So if you want to see what happens when four lads that have been singing sea shanties a cappella for 10 years together get together and then get historical recordings from the Library of Congress and then take some beats and build that all together, you can look up Press Gang Mutiny and see what we're doing. But I'll shoot you a disc. I'll shoot you a disc when we go live. But yeah, I love the analogy. I love the analogy because there's nothing quite like locking into harmony with someone when you're singing, right? With these guys that have sang for so many years, or even just stepping into a community choir and walking into a practice. There's this incredible feeling of listening and acting and then togetherness that happens at the same time, where just locking into harmony, moving in rhythm at the same time, being observant of each other's push and pull. These are beautiful things. And it's actually not that different than the way that we need to think about building in these new bandmates, right, into your daily performance, which is your work. And so I think that this is really about an ideal harmony between a user and the enterprises that are using it really is around enhancing human capabilities, right? It's about like the human is the one that's being innovative, but we can drive efficiency in that innovation, right? You can research faster, you can draft faster, you can get to your end results in a more informed way, right? There was a colleague of mine that mentioned talking about our kids and the impact of technology on our kids, just thinking like, what is it going to look like for our kids? Mine are 7 and 9 years old. What is it going to look like? So they've got a way to get to higher education, but what will it look like in that slightly less than a decade when they get into higher ed and they have graduate level expertise at their fingertips across any topics? So I think that really when we think about harmony, it's about a few things. Leaning on the human ingenuity and creativity, and then also finding the places where AI can come in and complement in a way that really uplifts those core human attributes that are the most valuable and impactful things. We are not creating value by copying and pasting from one place to another or whatever, right? It's not in the data analysis that is creating the value. It is in the analysis of the data, and then the storytelling and the discussion and the acting and the strategy building coming out of that data. So I think that the harmony is the locking together of the best of the human aspects, and then taking all of that kind of broad information and intelligence, if you want to call it that, and how that uplifts and creating that true kind of co-piloting experience.
I guess I would say that having been working in this space now since its inception and leveraging this technology for so long, I still find it challenging to, I do sense, I have this sense where at times I see the product of a model and I am like, yes, this is good enough. But at the same time, there's always a hesitancy to say, do I need to make that great, or am I okay with good enough? And I do find myself being a little bit concerned about being complacent, right? I mean, think about where we were several hundred years ago and people made their own food, right? And fast forward, and now we have all this processed food, which ends up being bad for us, right? Now we've got information coming out of models that's processed information. At what point is that bad for our brains? I wonder. It is a little bit concerning, but at the same time, I do know it's a significant accelerator. If I don't have to spend all that time growing things, cultivating those things to then go and make a meal to sustain myself, right? If I've got food ready to go, if I have information ready to go, I have inherent, like you talked about, so much more time in our day to be more productive, to invest more thought in critical tasks.
Yeah. Yeah. But that it needs to be quality nutrition and not empty calories, right? To extend your metaphor. And this is where even thinking about that from thinking about the growth of agriculture and industrial agriculture and everything that's happened to humanity. I mean, since just being able to move from hunter gathering over to growing, and that whole agriculture revolution and everything that happened. And then you think about even like the Food and Drug Administration and the work that was done. And you think about read the history of what happened in the food supply chain and the common sicknesses that happened across the world because of contaminated food supply before the FDA came to exist. There's this curve, it seems, where, okay, you can, first off, we're like making enough calories that we can focus on other stuff like art and commerce and technology. And this is all like agriculture revolution stuff that's happening. And then we have enough calories for people to go work on other things and add more value to society. So not everyone needs to create all the calories that we're past that subsistence. And then you go, and then that kind of spirals out of control. And to your point, you get to this level where that industrial food manufacturing people get E. coli from dirty meat plants, and there's chemicals being put into food because it's not controlled how it's being shipped around. Commonplace in the early part of the 20th century.
We're in this emergent space, right? Those early models, the original ChatGPT, everybody's worried about hallucinations. But I think as these pipelines have grown, and we definitely have moved into a space where we're getting better nutrition because we're taking these models and connecting them to tools, which has brought us to agentic AI, right?
Yeah.
Which I know this is something that you've got a keen understanding about, and you and I have talked about. But I mean, for our listeners who have heard that term before and aren't familiar with it, can you explain what agentic AI is and how it differs from typical generic generative AI?
Yeah, I think that it's really just thinking about, agentic, think about a travel agent, right? Think about this travel agent where you're taking a 1 month trip to a whole bunch of different places. We're not just going and talking about booking one ticket to a place that you've been, that you go every summer, but we're talking about a complex tour, right? And that agent is going to know let's say I'm a cyclist. So they're going to know which cycle paths that you want to go on. There's going to be these curated experiences. And so I think about agents as these curated experiences that then also have this level of autonomy, right? Because the other thing that agent is doing is that you're giving them a budget and you're telling them to go, and they're not coming back and asking you every time, do you want to stay at this one, or this one? Do you want to take this flight or that flight? They know what's happening, the stress is off, and they're just going to send you an itinerary when you're done. So I really think that is when we think of agentic AI as more autonomous, they're able to handle these complex problems. They're analyzing data, they're reasoning, they're planning. And this makes agentic AI invaluable in these scenarios where you need quick and accurate decision making. And so that aspect of having that agent that can execute on these little tasks for you. For me, that's the core of agentic AI in terms of just understanding that versus, for example, generative AI, which is you're asking it for something from a prompt and it will generate that for you, whether it's, I saw a new beat producing generative AI workflow in Audacity, a digital audio workstation. You can obviously poetry or images or write an essay or write a blog post. Generating that does not then take that blog post and put it into the right font and put it into the right format for that then to get out to your blog website and then schedule the blog post and then link that into your social media platform so that your social media blasts out, I have this new blog post out talking about this, this, and this. So that to me is, you can go and generate something with generative AI. An agent in that same workflow would help you build the document, but then also do the whole thing where it ships that blog out to the web.
Yeah, I like to think of it as the power to do the next thing, the power to do, in many ways, right, what we typically do anyway. I absolutely love the deep research feature that's come out across all the different providers.
Yep.
Write me a full-length dossier on Richard Kott and his history in singing and in Microsoft and his background. And it will go and read hundreds of websites and grab that information. It may even listen to a couple of tracks, find some interesting lyrics, and then provide those citations so that it's not just vomiting back what the model memorized, right? But it's parsing, combining, and mixing together all these beautiful ingredients of what's out there and then serving it up with citations, right? Being able to query databases, being able to create visualizations, being able to create tables in Excel, right? And being able to create something that is a shippable product, right? We've gone from something that's an accelerator, something that's an idea engine, to something that can push us even closer to something you can ship.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I really do think of what's the depth that we're getting, to your point, the increased accuracy that we're getting. And then I think also the combination of some of these workflows. So I think about it for me, for example, like I'm in the Surface PC business at Microsoft, and we're doing lots on AI PCs and Copilot Plus PCs, and people asking about what does all this mean? What does it mean for my business? And so I've built that it's a little Copilot agent, and I have grounded it in all of the material that we have on AI PCs, Copilot Plus PCs, and everything out there. I have built another bot that is a Surface technical sales agent. I have another bot that is a Surface marketing agent. And then I have all those three together, and I actually can, in my main Copilot, I can go into those individual bots in the user interface, and I can go right into that TSP, the technical sales professional bot, and I can say, give me the specs on this, this, and this, or compare these three models across whatever specification is required. I can also be in my main Copilot and ask that main Copilot, I'll mention the Surface technical bot. I'll mention the Surface marketing bot. I'll mention the Surface pricing comparison bot. And then through both the building of the prompt, as well as the referencing of those kind of sub-agents through my main Copilot, I'm then able to get all these different experts coming and working for me. And so that that clicked when I heard Satya mentioning on a podcast he recently did, talking about how we're going to have all of these countless agents kind of running around and scrubbing the web and doing the work and doing all the research and doing everything that we need, that are the more kind of micro specialized, more specifically grounded, more specifically built agents, that you will then have your one overall Copilot that will help curate that experience, that will help connect it to the actual outcomes that you're looking for.
It's about having a team of agents that you can leverage, like you were saying. I need a marketing slick for this, therefore go pull all the technical specs. So-and-so agent chime in with all the details that you need and see if there's any updates, right? And so you have a team that is in concert working together on your behalf.
Yeah, and this starts to show up and look, we know that this is the core of where we're trying to get to, this idea of these, for example, multi-skill agents. Mm-hmm. So in preparing for in preparing for that, I look at what we at Microsoft are doing around like the Azure AI agent service, and then having this leadership in developing these multi-skill agents where they can have kind of this leveraging of different specialized capabilities and then collaborating within a shared environment. And I think that's a really exciting advancement in this idea of multi-skill AI agents, and then the tasks that they're actually completing. Because when it comes down to it, what we want are tasks done, right? That's the end, is that for a lot of this agentic stuff, I want to do my own creative thinking, right? I might go and ask you for some information to fill in the blanks. I may ask you to help supercharge that research for me. Thank you very much, little robot. But also, I do want to my like expenses and travel verification task that Copilot caught for me. Eventually, I'd like to go into my Copilot agent and say, hey, file all my expenses for this trip. I took one day at the front and one day at the back that were personal days. Make sure that is verified in the new travel tool, and take the notes from the AI notes in the meeting and in my OneNote and create an executive summary that I can send off to my boss. Right? There's a multi-step, multi-skill where right. I go into my Copilot and I ask, hey, I have all this post-trip stuff to do, and a lot of it is admin. Oh, and then also build the executive summary for me. So I like that. And I've done that a few times. I like to see how flexible the agents are, how flexible the different AIs are as I play with them to see. I'll throw a curveball at them, or sometimes I'll contradict myself and see what comes back with it. So I think this is also interesting, is that we need to, as we look at figuring out the best way to have these robots do the job for us, you need to be willing to experiment and play a little bit, because it's certainly a lot of uncharted territory and new muscles to build.
Absolutely. It's fun to try and break it, so to speak, right? And see if it'll do the wrong thing, the right thing. And that's part of the learning experience.
It does help
exploring new things.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to see the evolution of this technology as our agents are now ready to take on multiple tasks. As Richard pointed out, the true benefit comes when we reject complacency and continue to leverage specialized capabilities across collaborative environments. From there, it's about injecting our own creativity after our agents do the grunt work, creating a strong final product that is a joint effort between us and Agentic AI. Next, we unpack how enterprises are bringing Agentic AI out of organizations and to everyday consumers. Enterprises have been doing this internally, but now they're starting to put it out there externally towards their customers. I'm curious, how have you seen different organizations start switching it from just internal to external?
Yeah. I think one of the, I'll say like easiest and best examples is certainly service. Because we saw internal service agents that were helping reps collect all the right information, right? You got a helpline, and you have someone sitting there and they're typing in and researching across 100 different technical PDFs or whatever kind of support they're giving. So I think that that's something that has certainly started as an internal, using an agent to support that workflow. And now we're seeing more and more. Like, you remember how awful those little pop-up, hey, how can I help you live chat boxes used to be on websites?
Yes.
Yeah, like really
now they're starting to get more useful.
Like laughably bad. And now they're not. Now we're starting to see that live agent being able to help people make product decisions on something that they're purchasing, to help triage customer support to the right place in a way that is not awful. So in a place like customer experience and support, I think that's somewhere where we are very quickly seeing the shift from kind of internal experimentation and internal tool use to seeing outward facing. All of that kind of customer support, service, which goes back to a lot of the core value that we can get out of this from the most basic level. The easiest access for me, the stuff that I first started doing with these agents, was research. And so this is just like it's like a very specific, focused research. slash issue resolution remediation workflow where I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah. And I think it is pushing this conversation around security to a new level where before, I mean, cybersecurity has always been top of mind, especially in the last 10 years. But I think once you start opening up agents to internal systems and being able to take actions, right, that bar just for cybersecurity controls and the need for red teaming applications just increases to a new level.
Yeah.
Right. There's definitely risk, but there's also reward.
Yeah, it's an interesting, this is a very interesting, I mean, as with all of this, right? This is where I think that from the very beginning of having these conversations with our customers, with partners like you internally, I think some of the very first and good work that Microsoft did around responsible AI leadership was critical to this. Because, and we've had this conversation before, but I think we all agree that this building of a framework, an ethical framework, for us at Microsoft, it's fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness. And I've seen these same fundamental tenets shared across many, not just ours, across all different organizations, public sector, private sector, big and small. These kind of become the foundational aspect. And so, yeah, to your point, there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of great value that we can get out of this. And so important that you have that framework, you have that foundation to build on top of, to make sure that you're building tools in a way that is safe, that is responsible, that is accountable. Yeah, great college.
And as things keep changing, it's not a set it and forget it, right? It's constant monitoring of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen a lot of different industries adopt AI, but I'm curious from your perspective, what are some of the more interesting industries that you've seen adopt it and where AI is supporting business workflows in a non-traditional sense, so to speak?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, there's I think the first place to start, and this is the easy one, but there's kind of the like across industry kind of universal stuff, right? So not to dodge the question, but I think that first off, we need to just understand that so much of this is just an augmentation or a tool set that can be deployed to work no matter what you're doing. It's being creative, it is researching, it's communicating more effectively. So I think that there's a lot in terms of, and I'd given some examples, meeting summaries and catching up on stuff in Outlook or in Teams. That is not the industry specific stuff. That's something that we can all learn from. So I think that the first part is to understand that a lot of this value is not just around necessarily a specific use case, but it's just this incredible technology that can help humans be better, broadly speaking, generally speaking, across the board. When we really then start thinking about specific use cases in industry, I think that, so I'd mentioned, and I won't go too much into that whole like triage agent, but this whole idea of like assessing an issue, routing customer inquiries. This one is core. And that is a lot of industries, particularly like tech industries, or else anyone that's selling a relatively complex product that someone might call for help about. That one is great. The live agents, this one is also, I'd say, correlated to the whole like customer service side of things. So that's really interesting. And I think that ability to handle the kind of bottom caseload of a person's work so that you can focus on human agents doing that higher level important stuff, that has shown a lot of great value. I think in customer service, I'm thinking of, for example, in telecommunications, right? Where you have relatively complex customer service inquiries around service, around data use, around pricing, and around plans. You might have a fairly complex offering of plans and promos and so on. that can be a really useful place to deploy AI in kind of this customer service slash sales place. So that's where I think another place to look is as you transition from the kind of post sales, right? Conversate. We started off with like the triaging and customer support and et cetera, et cetera. There's obviously the whole kind of pre-sales side of things there, where you have the integration of your email communications with all of your content in your CRM, with notes that are coming through in Teams. So I can take a Copilot for Sales agent and include that in my customer calls, and then have all of that plug back into our CRM system so that we then get a coordinated view, and someone can look in the CRM and they can say, okay, Richard's has had these meetings with these people at this particular place. And so I think that actually the sales agent one is another, flipping from the post sales to the pre-sales side of the coin. I think that's an important and an interesting one.
Well, if you're saying that agentic AI is going to take dirty data and make it cleaner, I'm sold. Because you're talking to a data scientist, the scientist who, I'm sure our CRM system is not the cleanest of data that's out there. And I know it's a constant struggle for many organizations to have people who aren't necessarily the strongest in data be the ones creating and curating the data that are needed to run and drive a business.
Yeah, data hygiene is still important, and you still have to do the good work, and you still have to have all of that. So certainly wouldn't say that you're going to be able to plug in an agent and it's going to be able to reason across a whole bunch of disparate, well, as you said, dirty data sources. But at the same time, I do think that there's a lot of value to be had there, where as we as organizations learn how to better deploy this technology, it gets us to a place where we can understand the data structures that we need in the back end. We do understand better the importance of that data hygiene so that we can leverage those incredible capabilities around. How many sellers spend how much time in CRM, where if that was automated, right? Let's take it to a very practical example. I'm thinking about, we launched a new Dragon Copilot. It was based on Dragon Actually Speaking way back in the day, which is a medical transcription voice to text service, where now, in short, and I would never do as the service that the Sizzle video or the product experts would do on it, but the idea of having this agent that is listening to your healthcare conversation from a medical professional to a patient, and rather than that medical professional being there and like making eye contact like this while listening and then typing up notes and then going back and trying to figure out what those notes meant at the end of the day, and having that 2 hours after a long day of seeing patients where you need to clean up all that stuff, to be able to actually have a face-to-face conversation with a patient, knowing that all of the conversation is being properly transcribed and documented, and then makes it into an electronic health record system so that the rest of the medical team is able to look at it, so that you're able to, as a healthcare professional, fight the burnout, see more patients, make more of an impact in people's lives. That to me is that's a great industry example of where we're seeing, never mind data hygiene, never mind what you're selling, never mind plugging it into the CRM. We're talking about a doctor that is able to help
quality care for people,
better health outcomes. That is just incredible.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, right, is what new muscles, right, are we going to be developing? Things are changing so fast, but the way we work has been evolving quickly over the last 2+ years.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I've been thinking a lot about what new roles are just going to suddenly emerge from this agentic revolution.
Yeah, great question. For the past couple of, and there's this big explosion where it seemed like every business article was about the $500,000 a year job you could get as a prompt engineer, right? Which is not they're not wrong. There's a huge amount of value in being able to prompt effectively, in being able to understand how all of these systems work, and then in being able to tune your natural language to manipulate those systems better. So I think that is one where, for a person that is very language oriented, I'm so pleased, because I'm the kind of person that has gray hairs due to misuse of apostrophes. No, seriously, please.
So tell me what you think of the Oxford comma.
Stop. I'm a huge believer in the Oxford comma. I'm a huge believer in the Oxford comma. Yeah. No, I am on team Oxford comma. But seriously, the ability to communicate in words precisely, very precisely, and then continue that communication in a conversation in a way that starts to winnow down what you're looking for, to qualify, to add where, like, I'll look at some of the Copilot conversations that I have with my machine, and I look at the way that I am correcting or asking for more depth, or I realize I wasn't specific enough, or I realize that I didn't qualify exactly how I wanted that information to show up specifically, right? How long I wanted that information to be, how much depth I want. All of these things, I think, really like how critical thinking spans into language. I think that some of these, the core skill of communicating what you're thinking is going to become so much more important, which, I mean, what could be more important than being able to express your ideas? Just now we're doing it with a potential super intelligence on our hands, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to force people to be more strategic as well, right? Mm-hmm. Now that we're not investing so much time in curating content, in managing data, we can now spend more time thinking about what it means, seeing patterns that we might not have seen previously, and I don't know, hopefully apply. I'd love to see more game theory being applied to what we do every day in work, as opposed to shooting from the hip, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. On a lot of things, being strategic. I will say, right, as we begin wrapping this up, how this all plays out in the compliance and regulatory space is going to be interesting. Thinking about certain tech entrepreneurs' attitude of break it and just let somebody come tell you you're not allowed to do it. Attitude of the way certain companies made their bones, so to speak, in the industry. Yeah. I think AI is pushing the bounds of that. And I think there's going to be, I think it's going to run into a wall where some guardrails are going to need to be enforced.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we approach this with a measure of restraint, a measure of caution, and a measure of studiousness. Really, we need to think about like how this is being used and why. And to your point, I do think that the era of move fast and break things may have been for a tech world of old. And I think that maybe given the vast implications of superintelligence, AGI, whether that's a whole other, that's a documentary, not a podcast. That whole conversation there, I think certainly does point to the fact that, yes, we do need to be thinking of, you're saying that whole like compliance and the regulatory framework around what's happening in this evolving space is really like, I think goes back to principles. It goes back to foundational principles. Because if we have that, that 10 commandments that we can refer to, right? When I think about fairness, thinking about reliability and safety, thinking about privacy and security, thinking about transparency, right? Where did that information come from and how did it come there? Show me the citations. How was this reasoned? Accountability, inclusiveness, right? These, I am specifically going through these responsible AI commitments from Microsoft one by one on purpose. Again, this is not this is a very important, I think, and a forceful reiteration, because as we think about those different components, there's going to be different elements that come into, I mean, there's a great book by a woman named Kate Crawford called The Atlas of AI that goes in and gives various examples of the ethical considerations of AI. Talks about, for example, the data sets that are used to train, let's say, facial recognition. Well, are the people within that data set representative of all of the people that will be using that model? Will it understand skin tones or face shapes or all of the above? That's one small example of how we're, for example, training the data. So yeah, I think that having that foundational framework where when something comes up, you can go back and say, these are our principles, right? These are the values. These are from an ethical perspective, what we need to uphold as a company, as a country, as a species, right? This is what we need to value in this changing realm of AI to make sure that this all goes the way that is best for us in our lives, in our businesses, not to zoom out too big, but I've always been a believer, because this isn't a belief. We are our technology. This is a fact. Right? We talked about our agricultural revolution. Change in technology defined the change. I mean, the emergence of language was the first technology that defined humanity. And then agriculture, right? And then you continue, whether it's agriculture, whether it's storytelling, whether then you fast forward into the steam engine or the internal combustion engine or the transistor or electricity, or all of these things have defined the progress of humanity. If you look at kids these days, I just turned 40. I sound like I'm getting old. But if you look at these kids these days with their phones, and they're always looking at their phones all the time, and they can't concentrate for more than 2 minutes, and they don't know how to read a novel. And in all seriousness, like half joking, but the way that we use technology completely changes the way that we as a species operate. And so then, to your point, this is the core of it, is how is this new technology that we have built, that we have defined, that is the next great revolution, perhaps more so than the transistor itself, perhaps more so than software itself. How do we make that for us to serve in our best interests?
Going off what you said earlier, right? The language you use is so important. So if this technology improves the language of the next generation, I think that would be a win. As a scientist, we're taught to be very specific and explicit in what we are saying and what we're not saying. And as people learn to train models and interact with these models, they're going to need to use quality language.
Yeah.
Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, as it is every time we speak. I'm glad that we finally dialed in on your stance on the Oxford comma. I think that is most critical, right? Sure. I mean, when a panda walks into a room, it eats, shoots, and leaves. And it's important to specify what that means.
A man after my heart. Oh, it's great to spend some time with you. It's really good to see you.
I always look forward to conversations with Richard. They never fail to bring a fresh perspective. As we continue to integrate Agentic AI into our work, it will be crucial to keep our data clean, our creativity sharp, and our tools compliant. When those elements are in place, the possibilities for what we can achieve expand exponentially. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Edge of IT. For more information, visit our website at convergetp.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Edge of IT on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your favorite shows.